response to abuses of power, with some language updates that I will provide.
When in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the
Political arrangement which has connected the citizenry to a false and unrepresentative president,
a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes that impel them to the separation. We hold
the truth
to be self-evident
and yet ignored,
that all humanity
are created equal, that they are endowed with certain unalienable rights, and among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted amongst the people, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. That whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter it and to institute new government. Governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes, and accordingly
citizens
are more disposed to suffer than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed.
but our current government has already destroyed many of those traditional forms, practices, and ideals to which we are accustomed. Norms of decent behavior, alliances with democratic nations, the responsibility of 3 branches of government to check each other.
The responsibility of the free press's vital role in supplying more than just the government's version of the truth.
And the rule of law. All of these are under attack.
In fact, a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce
us,
under absolute despotism. It is
therefore our
right to throw off such a government. The history of the present
would be
king
And his slavish minions in Congress.
is a history of repeated injuries and usurpations, all having in direct object the establishment of an absolute tyranny. To prove this, let facts be submitted to a candid world. He has refused to assent to laws
that cut into his profits, such as the Emoluments Clause of the U.S. Constitution.
He has refused to pass other laws
and policies
for the accommodation of large districts of people,
Such as assisting the citizens of Puerto Rico after their hurricane, mistreated because they have very little political power and darker skin than he.
He has obstructed the administration of justice.
Because he fears the law and he wishes to be above it,
He has made judges dependent on his will alone.
provided their pro-corporation and anti-union biases are endorsed by the Federalist Society.
He has kept among us, in times of peace,
A federal policing force that he alone controls, that seizes parents as they attempt to pick their children up at school, or when they're on their way to their job they've held for decades.
he has affected to render the military independent of and superior to the civil power.
But has placed himself as independent of and superior to both, changing our international policies without seeking counsel or even informing the nation as to these changes.
He has denied the human right to apply to this country for asylum, a right affirmed by federal law, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and centuries of national and religious traditions by selectively preventing applications of asylum seekers and terrorizing them by separating parents from children, caging toddlers with no plan to reunite them.
He has combined
and colluded
with others to subject us to a jurisdiction foreign to our Constitution and unacknowledged by our laws.
Which serves a foreign dictator's agenda. He has thereby ignored a foreign attack on our electoral processes and fail to defend us from future attacks because he benefits from such attacks.
He has combined with others
especially Congress, to centralize inordinate power in him.
for cutting off our trade,
Arbitrary and capricious trade wars, even with our most trusted allies.
For discrediting every American institution that could check his power, such as the intelligence agencies, the FBI, the Justice Department, any courts that dare oppose him, and the free press guaranteed us by the First Amendment.
For singling out small and politically weak groups for discrimination, such as Muslims and the LGBTQ community.
For appointing cabinet officials that pervert the reasons their departments were created.
Lavish themselves on taxpayer-provided luxuries and use their positions for their personal enrichment.
For insulting our intelligence by calling this group of appointees the best people.
For disadvantaging the citizenry and promoting the interests of corporations by ending net neutrality.
For ending access to health care for millions of Americans.
For concentrating tax cuts on corporations and the very rich, and engineering those tax cuts that do go to working families will shrink and then disappear.
For thereby ensuring that future governments will be crippled by a ballooning national debt.
For working to give federal and state governments the power to decide whether women shall be forced to give birth.
For fostering a culture that condones sexual assault.
he has excited
Domestic strife amongst us by pitting groups against each other.
Caucasians against people of color.
The descendants of immigrants from current immigrants.
Christians against all others.
Men against women.
And those few news media outlets that ignore his lies, crimes, and incompetency against all other media.
Which he maligns as the enemy of the people.
He has used fear and anger to manipulate his followers until, as he boasted, he could shoot someone in Times Square and they would still support him.
Thus, his followers' minds now seem closed to all reason and evidence of his guilt, mistrustful of all information he discredits, and alienated from American institutions and the majority of the citizenry.
In every stage of these oppressions, we have petitioned for redress in the most humble terms.
Citing the majority of Americans who did not vote for him.
Who want affordable health care.
A strong social security system,
A stronger public education system.
A woman's right to choose.
And a future for our children and grandchildren safe from the ravages of climate change.
we therefore declare that all political connection
Between us and our would-be king
And our would-be king
is to be totally dissolved
is to be totally dissolved
at the earliest time possible.
at the earliest time possible.